Symbolism is a method used by all humans to convey meaning beyond our ability to articulate. A symbol conveys ideas through image and metaphor, and while the meaning and effect can be recognized from the symbol, its true nature remains unconscious. Archetypal symbols, ones that can be found all over the world, are widespread because their meaning is universally applicable, although the reason the symbol appears in the specific form it does may always be a mystery. The yin and yang is one such archetypal symbol. While many relate the yin and yang to Asian Taoism, there is evidence the symbol was also used in Europe before it was communicated from Asia. The symbol clearly must have a lot of unconscious content to it. In fact, the deepest and most gripping symbols perhaps have an unlimited source of unconscious information within them, because they may describe the very way we think and perceive the world itself, and be permanently beyond the reach of our articulation. Today I will break down some of the deeper symbolism of the yin and yang, and how it relates in astonishing detail to some of the structures of the hero stories that we tell. This is going to be a fairly different video than the rest of my videos that I've done, and it will be a lot more abstract and less, you could say, logical and rigorous as some of the other videos I've posted. But don't let that take away anything from the video. The yin and yang has been used as a symbol for the cosmos or the world. It goes far deeper than just saying that the yin and yang applies to the world we find ourselves in, but it was also used to describe every single cosmos that can exist. What is a cosmos? Well, a cosmos is just a defined space. So for example, your house may be a cosmos, and within your house there may be certain rooms, and these are cosmoses as well. But even anything that we can categorize and perceive has its own cosmos. So say the realm of mathematics or physics. These are realms of consciousness that can be described by the yin and yang symbol. The yin and yang symbol has its two opposing elements, with a little bit of each opposing element found within itself. However, in the past, the alchemists actually edited this symbol to try and update it and make it more realistic to their worldview. Instead of just having an element of yin in yang and an element of yang in yin, the small points of yin and yang in its counterpart broke down into further and further yin and yangs, as you can see. And this was their attempt of creating a more accurate picture of the world and the cosmoses which we find ourselves in. Think about the cosmos of your own self, your individuality. You exist within yourself, and there are things that are on the outside of you. But that cosmos that you find yourself in your body, let's say, and in your mind, exists within a larger structure outside of yourself. For example, you may be part of a family, and your family may be part of a community, and your community may be part of a political system. And here we can see this new alchemical version of the yin and yang in reality. We have all these cosmoses that exist within each other. The yang represents order and the yin represents chaos. So it's the Taoist teaching that all cosmoses are made up of chaos and order, and created by the very juxtaposition of a principle and its opposite. For example, you can only define a house as something to live in if you understand what it is to not live in something. You may only be able to understand life by its juxtaposition to its opposite, death. Going back to the cosmos of the political system we were talking about, think about the two wings we often refer to in the political system. Of course, it may be more complex than this, but we always talk about having left and right wing making up the political system. There are these two opposing forces, one that wants to remain conservative and tight and centered around the cultural tradition, and we have the other wing that wants to update and renew the cultural tradition. And here we can see these two opposing forces of an element of the culture that is being passed down. Think about your house in terms of the yin and yang as well. Your house is constantly in decay, but also at the same time, as if you're keeping it in order, then you're updating your house at the same time. There are these two juxtaposing forces, the forces of nature that tend towards chaos, and then the forces that we bring into our lives, which try and order the world around us. Now, what the Taoists taught was that one should walk through the world on the border between chaos and order. The cosmos may be out of balance, but it is the individual's responsibility to balance these forces in their own life. This isn't so much about being in a certain place in the world, but navigating through forces of order and chaos correctly. It involves aiming true and becoming independent. The Taoists represented this state as one of stillness, where the one walking the border of the yin and yang was unperturbed by any external forces and pathologies. This was the responsibility of the ideal man. We can see then how the ideal man in this philosophy relates to the ideal heroes that are put forward more often in stories, especially Western stories. There is talks of the narrow path that one must have to walk down to reach God. Often the hero is thrown between two extreme states of being on their quest. A state where they begin on their path to become the hero that saves the world, and a state where they realize that their current form is insufficient. Here we have a paradox in the journey of the hero. This is why we often see hero figures disenfranchised with the task that they have at hand at some point in the film. However, what makes a hero in a story is the realization that they are responsible for taking control of their actions and that there's something at stake. This is when the hero begins to walk the way, or the narrow path, on the border of the opposing forces. They reconcile the two opposites that they find themselves in and begin to transform. But how much of the hero myth can be related to the yin and yang, and vice versa? It might seem like a rather mute question at first, since the yin and yang seems to be such a startlingly simple symbol. However, as we've discussed, the amount of content that can be drawn out of these unconscious and simple symbols is almost infinite. Perhaps it would be a stretch to relate it to so many things, but that is until we realize that it's a symbol of each and every cosmos, and its pattern matches and reflects the world everywhere. A story is also a cosmos, a novel is a cosmos, and the hero is a character in the story. So, if a story is a cosmos, then we have to find out what role the hero plays in terms of relating it to the yin and yang symbol. To understand the way the hero myth and the yin and yang relate, we'll first look at the border that divides yin and yang. Yin and yang touch at this point, and without the separation, the symbol would cease to exist. Yin would flow into yang, and the symbol would dissolve into something meaningless. It was precisely this tension of opposites that creates the symbol, just as the tension of opposites creates every cosmos. We also identified earlier that the border between order and chaos is a path that should be walked down, and the one who can manage to walk down this narrow path is heralded as the ideal person by their culture. Now we have to think of what role the hero is playing in a mythical setting. To save the world or the whole cosmos from dissolution or destruction, often by completing the most daring and difficult task there is, in other words, walking the narrow path. So the hero must walk the narrow path to save the world, but it's also the case that the existence of the border within yin and yang saves the symbol from complete dissolution. So we can see here how the cosmos of a story relates to the journey that the hero must take. The border saves the symbol from dissolution, and the hero's journey is the path that saves the cosmos from dissolution also. Now we shall note the two different types of archetypal hero myths that exist. One type of archetypal hero story includes a hero descending into the depths to slay a great monster to save the world. This could be going into the cave to kill the dragon, or down into the sea to kill the monster at the bottom of the ocean. The other type of hero myth involves a hero that stands up to the corrupt, authoritarian tyrant and brings them down. So how can we see how this relates to the yin and yang? Well, this middle border, the path or the way in the narrative structure, contains two ways to traverse it. One can traverse the border in the middle, from bottom to top and from top to bottom. Like the hero standing up to the tyrant, the border travels up from the bottom to the top, where there is predominantly order. Like the warrior facing the dragon, the border can be traversed top to the bottom, where the symbol contains more yin than yang. So we can see how much of this archetypal structure of the hero myth can relate to this cosmos that we find ourselves when looking at the yin and yang. One could also compare different hero myths from religions and others from stories or movies. A religious hero myth takes place on a more cosmic, archetypal stage. The religious story is an attempt to allow the hero to inhabit more of this symbol and encompass more of the totality of human experience than a movie. Let's look at the story of Jesus Christ in the Christian hero myth. Jesus is a cosmic hero that saves the order and structure of the world, and he also completes both hero journeys to do so. Jesus is part God that falls with man all the way into death to defeat the Leviathan. This is an image of the journey from the top to the bottom of the cosmos in its entirety. By doing so, Jesus defeats the greatest monster known to mankind, death and suffering and evil, by entering into its place of residence, extracting the good from within it. Note how similar this is to stories of heroes returning from the dragon's lair with a hoard of gold. However, Jesus also embodies the counterpart to this form of his hero myth. Jesus also stands up to the tyrannical authority of the Romans and, interestingly, perhaps even God himself. Remember that Jesus is part God that descends and spares humanity from God's wrath. So here we have God distancing himself from himself to spare the weak and the innocent and those who want to come and love God. He is spared precisely by this distance. That is definitely a discussion for another time, and it's a very complex and complicated idea. Jesus resurrects from the lowest place he descends to, his punishment on the cross. He rises from the dead, and God's order is instilled in the world. Jesus becomes judge over all the earth, and instead of the might of the Romans being the order of the cosmos, Jesus allows the poor and the sick and the meek to follow him upwards into heaven if they so choose. And he returns to his heavenly state and has created the cosmos in its totality by doing so. Jesus, as the cosmic hero, defines the cosmos in the way that it should be in the eyes of God, how justice and order is brought into the world by what he has done, and he has denied the Romans the ability to make might and power and force the only true order in the universe. As long as people align themselves with Jesus' principles, they will begin to rise upwards. There are people in the cosmos who are not walking the narrow path, but are close. Either their lives are slightly too much in order or too much in chaos. The center of the world is the border, but it is also the orienting principle of the cosmos. This is often represented as a spiral staircase into the heavens, or the land of the giants. By revolving around this centering principle tightly enough, one will begin to walk with the hero and ascend upwards. Perhaps one can never imitate the hero completely, but as long as one chooses to try and navigate as closely to the center as possible, the message is that they will be risen upwards in towards the heavens. But at the same time, the other element of the hero myth is needed for someone to move forward in the world. To prevent the decay of one's own world, one must descend and slay the monsters in the shadows looking to pull them down. This brings us on to how the rest of the yin and yang relates to the hero myth. So what is the outside border of the yin and yang? Well, the outside border is the set of things that define the cosmos. The border could be equivalent to the facts of what something is, or the properties that allow us to categorize it. The political system is based on the structures of law and order that are upheld. A house by its having walls and a roof and doors, a chair being something that one can sit on. These are the objective defining factors of what makes something. The defining features that allow something to be categorized under a single rubric have a distinct, although often unknowable nature. Let's move back to Jesus and the idea of the cosmic hero. Taking the Christian perspective, it is Jesus' actions that allow humanity to be redeemed. Therefore, it's the facts of the cosmos that influence whether we are redeemed or not that form this outside border of the yin and yang. It is Jesus' story through the middle border, down into the depths and back up to the heights, that allow the symbol to exist. And then it's Jesus who gets to become judge for doing so, because he gets to traverse and judge the outside contents of the border of the yin and yang and decide that humanity has been redeemed in his quest to fully explore the human story. Here we can see the entire cosmic story is embedded within man. We could see the inside border as something like the journey through life that can redeem the world, and the outside border as the events and happenings in the world that qualify it to be redeemed. For example, these outside borders, if we translated these into some form of images that we may understand, perhaps it could be a story that this outside border represents. There's the story of the hero that allows the cosmos to be redeemed, but the fact that the cosmos is redeemed comes down to the story that is told in the cosmos, that there were a group of men who left their sin behind, and by slaying it or changing it, they brought the world into a divine state and overcame all that was in their past. And so long as Jesus, the judge, judges this to be an event worthy of salvation, the cosmos is saved and defined. It's important to note that the hero's journey is an integral part of defining this section of the cosmos. The inside border flows into the outside border and vice versa. Even when we name something, for example a chair, this cosmos of chairhood is only created by our active perception, by our mapping of the object into the meaning of our existence. A chair is something which can be sat on. Here we can see that to be named a chair, one must be able to sit on the chair, but one must also be able to perceive the chair as something to sit on and be able to name it as such. Just how the cosmos of the chair is dependent on the journey through the middle of the perceiver, is the religious claim that the world is dependent on the journey of the cosmic hero. It's a very abstract and complicated idea. How can we understand this idea a bit more clearly? Well, every world or cosmos that we find ourselves in, we can only define it by its meaningful relation to mankind or ourselves. So we understand the world that we find ourselves in based on its meaning to us. But another element of how we actually understand the world is by understanding what a further progressed and more ideal man is in relation to the world we find ourselves in at the same time. Every world that we find ourselves in, on the outside frontiers, on the border of what we know the world to be, is an image of a more ideal man. A man who grapples with the cosmos and understands it in a way far deeper than we do. It's part of the way we even perceive the world. To take a very rudimentary example, we may perceive someone larger than us as someone who would be able to harm us in a fight, but at the same time, we can perceive them as someone who would be defeated by someone larger and stronger and more physically powerful than them at the same time. And both these elements go hand in hand in our way of perceiving. And finally, this is why we can find the cross as a symbol of everlasting security and hope. Since the cosmic hero has already striven from the very highest to the very lowest, there is no frontier in which his story ceases to define. The cross is an eternal hope on the frontier of every world we find ourselves in. This is why Jesus' death on the cross redeemed man in the eyes of God. There is always an option for man to move forward. But these ideas are very, very complex and they interweave with so many things, and there's so much more to talk about here. I think I'd like to do another part where we go even deeper than we went today. I'm not sure how this came across, so please let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if you had any ideas to share too about how these symbols relate to all these grand religious stories that we love to engage with so much, that'd be greatly appreciated. As always, I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. I enjoyed doing something a little bit more abstract and less philosophically rigorous, but just as interesting at the same time, I think. Because sometimes thinking about these symbols can just be such a source of intrigue. It's unbelievable. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye.